What's up, Rotterdam? See, this is the energy that we need for today. Um, I'm very, very excited. This is going to be an amazing program. So please bear with me. I'm very, very excited about this. Welcome. Welcome, Rotterdam and neighboring cities. Take your seat. Welcome to Beyond the Beat 2021. Those of you who were here last year, yes, I know. It was amazing. So only happy to have this event come back. This is, of course, in association with the beautiful Hip Hop House, Notorious IBE. Yeah. All the people, Lilith Mag. All the people are here. So the space is here. It's a safe space, and we want to keep it that way. My name is Tasha Slachtand. I'm going to be your day host for today, for the afternoon. I'm going to be walking you through the program. So, telling you what time things are happening, telling you when to go back in, when to come back out, stuff like that. All right? So we're going to start with the COVID regulations, firstly, because we are still in a Punani pandemic. Who said that? We're still in there, so we're going to make it as short as possible. We're supposed to stay in our seats. If something gets if we're going to get really heated, if the discussion moves you to get up, I say get up. Don't start walking, don't go walking, but just stay in your seat, get up, make noise, all that stuff, because we kind of need the feedback. The panelists, the guest speakers, they need the feedback, all right? So, what do we have planned for you guys? We have Q&As, we've got panel discussions, we've got movie screenings, everything. And I'm excited to announce the first part of the program. But firstly, I have to say that after every program, we are supposed to go out and come back in. You may wonder why, because we have to count the people that are allowed in this space. All right? So we'll just go out. Don't go too far. Don't go wandering. Don't go into town. Stay close. Stay close. And the topic of today is, it's heavy. Let me grab my papers. It's about Black joy and rage. It's been a crazy year. I know you guys have felt it too. You've been here. And all the stuff that's been happening, of course, the pandemic, then the demonstrations, Black Lives Matters. People have really felt that stuff is happening. People are speaking out. People are not having it. People are angry. People are frustrated. And we're going to talk about all the things today. All right? Is that okay? Yeah, you guys ready for that? Yeah? All right. Did I forget anything? Philip? Somebody? Is that it for now? All right. So in a minute, actually in half an hour, we're going to have a Q&A led by the amazing Clarice Gaga. I said it. From Lilith Mag, who's going to, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but she is a journalist, program maker. That's it. That's what we want to hear. That's the type of stuff that we want to hear. She knows it. She knows the program. And an amazing pole dancer, I've been told, as well. An all-round woman that is just there, always been there. A person that's been there, supportive, always there to tell you what's... No, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. We've had serious conversation in the back, and that's why I'm still a little bit hyped. Also, I should let you know that this is going to be recorded. It's going to be streamed, live streamed. If you have people at home that couldn't be here, I think they can still buy tickets, right? For the live stream? Yes? Text Ida from Hip Hop House. She's got the hookup. She's got the hookup. All right? So we also welcome the people that are not here in the flesh, but still supporting us online. Without further ado, I want to introduce the first speaker. Her name is Kelechi. Yeah, that's her name. She is... Where to start? Where to start? Well, I should say the first thing that I really love about her is that she's a pole dance teacher. and very amazing at it. So I think that that's what she and Clarice have in common. But she's also a program maker. She has a podcast that I fell in love with this morning and stayed stuck on for like 4 episodes. So you should definitely hear her. And she's going to talk about, anger.
Anger.
She's going to talk about anger.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's basically it.
That's it.
So without further ado, introduce you to Kelechi.
Thank you. Thank you, Tata. Hi, everybody. It's lovely to be here in Rotterdam. I feel like you have better vibes than London. Love it for us. I've got my phone with me, not because I need to check Instagram, but there are quotes that I want to read you from there. Like, I enjoy that you're all here. My name is Kelechi Okafor. I'm an actor, director, podcaster, writer, and I have a pole dance studio. And all of these things I sort of fell into along the way, just finding my purpose and following my light has led me on this path. And along that path, I think what has propelled me in terms of fuel has been anger. And people don't like to talk about anger. We don't like to talk about it. But what's interesting is 2020, everybody was moving mad. Everybody was out in the streets and they were propelled by anger. They were fueled by anger because they wanted change, and everybody was marching and they were marching for a just cause. So collectively, we could experience anger in a way that we hadn't seen really for years. And I just thought that was beautiful. I was asked to write for British Vogue about the beauty of anger. And suddenly, you know, if we're looking at the things and we're being transparent, I've been pitching a book about anger for years, about black women and anger. I've been pitching the same book, the same idea for years, and publishers were like, I just don't know. I just don't know if people want to talk about that. It's just how do we universalize it? We can't universalize something that specifically happens to black women. In that sense, I mean, black women are all across the globe, but I can't make Sally over there understand what's happening intimately in my experiences as a black woman. I can't do that, and I don't want to do that, because I've had to find my experiences in the experiences of white women. I had to try and find myself. So why can't they do the same? Why can't we turn it around? Why do I need to help them to do that? So suddenly, 2020 happens, the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, and my emails are popping off. Off! Is Kelechi still doing that book about anger? Because we'd really love to take a look at. Oh. I mean, one day we'll really have to talk about the prophetic nature of black women's experiences and how one time or other, the things that we experience, years to come, you man are going to experience it too. So, we'll save that for another day. So, I'm looking at that thinking that whatever affects the black woman, whether we're talking about cisgendered women or we're talking about trans women, whatever experiences that black women have, at some point, other people will have to reckon with. And so rather than acknowledge, embrace, empathize with the experiences of black women immediately, people are waiting until it hits them across the face, and it's like, oh my God, they were telling us this all along. And then it's like, when will black women come and save us? Black women have come to save the day yet again. I haven't got an S on my chest. I'm not coming to save anybody. You can save yourselves. The whole point of this is that we can save ourselves. And I just felt like it was important to open with that. So I invite you as we start, because I generally don't like talking at people. So even when I was approached like this would be lovely and I was invited to give a keynote speech, I said straight away, I don't like talking at people. So I'm going to be keeping my distance, but, down there trying to understand where you're all coming from. But what I want to know from you is that when was the last time you felt angry? Today? Someone said today. When was the last time you felt angry? Today. To Thursday, somebody said? Yes. That was specific. Thursday at 5:55 p.m. But it's interesting, today, Thursday, right? And what did you do with the anger?
I cried.
And that's important. We cry. We cry. Black women actually cry. Would you believe that? Oh my God, we cry. Because there's a certain, but our tears don't have the same gravity. in public spaces, because a black woman cries and it's still seen through the filter of angry, aggressive. But there are another group of women who, when they cry, things move about very, very quickly. So when you were angry, what did you do with your anger? Beautiful. Because again, Toni Morrison talks about us having the friends, that true friendship, how our friends are the sisters that help us put ourselves back together. And so sisterhood is important, and I would believe that it's through sisterhood that black women have been able to thrive, because we've been able to find other women that have allowed us to put the pieces of ourselves back together. When the world presents us as refracted and gives us shards of ourselves and says, this is who you are, and we're trying to figure out our identity based on that, and we're cutting our hands based on what we've been told, that these are the shards of your identity, we have a sister friend that helps us to put those pieces back together. They don't admonish us for our anger. They don't admonish us for feeling and crying. They simply sit there with us in the pain of putting ourselves back together. So Audre Lorde, because I love to always honor and pay homage to the people who have come before us, Audre Lorde said this about anger. This was in June 1981. Audre Lorde gave a keynote presentation at the National Women's Studies Association conference in Connecticut, and this is what she said. Racism, the belief in the inherent superiority of one race over all others, and thereby the right to dominance, manifest and implied. Women respond to racism. My response to racism is anger. I have lived with that anger, ignoring it, feeding upon it, learning to use it before it laid my visions to waste for most of my life. Once I did it in silence, afraid of the weight. My fear of anger taught me nothing. Your fear of that anger will teach you nothing also. And that is where we found ourselves. People are so scared of seeing anger through the bodies of women, but specifically seeing the anger through the bodies of black women, that we don't want to have those conversations. Black women get angry and it's like, oh, no, let's ignore her, put her in the closet. We don't want to have to deal with her. We're not doing that. She's crazy. She's hysterical, right? But that's why we can't move anywhere, because the very real things that your attention's been drawn to, you don't want to pay attention to it. I don't know the statistics here in the Netherlands, but I do know that in Britain, black women are 4 times more likely to die during childbirth in comparison to white women. And you mention that statistic, and everyone's like, what? How did that happen? What's different? What's the difference in their experience to our experience? Are you joking? Are you joking? You don't see how the way that we view black women as angry also contributes to then how they're treated in the healthcare system. Because if you say this woman is angry and she comes to you in pain, but you can only read that pain as anger, what pain relief are you going to give her? So she's suffering in pain. How are you going to diagnose her properly when all you're reading her as is, oh, she's just angry, not going to pay attention, and then you're shocked. You're shocked that then black mothers, black birthing people are dying 4 times more in comparison to white women. And then when that's presented to Parliament, they say, oh, that's terrible. Oh, that's terrible, but we can't just focus on black women. Let's look at working class women as well. I love that you said that. Let's look at working class women as well, and then look at working class black women. What happens then? Because everywhere you try to take it, I'll meet you there. And I'll bring it back to the blackness. You're not going to get out of this. Because yes, there is a class issue, but we can't ignore that there is a race issue. And when those things intersect, it's a mad thing, right? And these are the things that we want to focus on. Audre Lorde goes on to say, women responding to racism means women responding to anger. Anger of exclusion, of unquestioned privilege, of racial distortions, of silence, ill use, stereotyping, defensiveness, misnaming, betrayal, and co-optation. Every time we talk about cultural appropriation, we talk about it, and we're not meant to talk about it because we're meant to encourage everybody to share with each other. But I would like for you to tell me who is the counterpart to the Kardashians and how they've extrapolated from black culture, black women's aesthetic. Who has made such a success, such an empire in the way that they have, that is dark-skinned and black? It's not possible, right? And so we look at it and we think about women like that and we go, oh, well, maybe it's just their proximity to blackness that allows for that. Their proximity to blackness through what? Black men. And they then get to perform black womanhood because of the proximity they have to black men, while negating anger, because they don't show anger, they cry, but they're afforded those tears because they still have that proximity to whiteness. So we share memes all day long of Kim, like, Kim, people are dying. Like, we'll share all of that stuff because it doesn't take away from them, but there are people who are being silenced in the process. Audre Lorde goes on to say, my anger is a response to racist attitudes and to the actions and presumptions that arise out of those attitudes. If your dealings with other women reflect those attitudes, then my anger and your attendant fears are spotlights that can be used for growth in the same way I have used learning to express my anger for my growth, but for corrective surgery, not guilt. Guilt and defensiveness are bricks in a wall against which we all flounder. They serve none of our futures. And that's why I don't shy away from saying the things that need to be said, because people are going to get uncomfortable. But oh well, you can readjust in your seat. Yeah? Because discomfort, moving out of our comfort zones is where the real revolution happens. Moving out of our comfort zones and telling the truth. So many of us do not tell the truth. Black women don't tell the truth to themselves about how angry they are. Other people want to pretend like they don't understand why black women should be angry in the first place. But we need to understand that anger, especially in the white supremacist patriarchal society that we exist within, anger is our sure path to liberation. Everyone that has come before us has expressed anger. And it's after they've died that everyone's like, oh, wasn't she wonderful? Wasn't she great? She died broke and destitute. What are you talking about? She died broke, destitute, and angry. What are you talking about? So I invite us to feel the anger presently, and that's not just black women, but if non-black women also, white women specifically, were to tap into their own rage, were to give themselves permission to feel their own rage and to normalize that rage, then it wouldn't seem so bad. Black women, therefore, would not be the antithesis to whiteness, to white feminine purity, because white women are feeling their anger too, and they're feeling it honestly in a way that allows for everybody else to move forward. So, thank you, Audre Lorde. Angry, yes, I am. Black, yes, I am. Woman, yes, I am. But am I an angry black woman? No, I'm not. Because that is a box that people will try to force you into, and that box doesn't have any air. I can't do anything there. I need to breathe, and I need to go towards my joy. And the only way I can do that is to not be in the box of the angry black woman as a stereotype, but definitely to embrace my anger, to live in my blackness, and to own my version of my womanhood. So when we look at anger specifically, we look at anger individually. We have every right to be angry. Right now, you're living in a country that colonized people. And everyone's mixed up, all blended together, but that is still a result of colonialism. That is still a result of the transatlantic slave trade. Yet somehow, we don't want to talk about that because we want to focus on the fact, well, we're all mixing, and we're all jolly, and we're all having a great time. But you don't want to look at the intricacies of the dynamics. That means that some people are over here and some people are over there. And why did the change only start happening here specifically over the last 15 years, really? There are conversations that people really need to have. December times, you lot are cussing out them man that want to do blackface. And I know that, I think it's banned here in Rotterdam, but it's still happening in Amsterdam. It's not banned. Wow. It's not, wow. So you can just walk up and down the street in blackface and an afro, and people are telling you not to do it. And you said, it's my culture. Interesting. But racism doesn't exist, so that's just a celebration. The remnants of colonialism are there all of the time. When you look at the GDP, when you look at, how rich countries are, when we look at certain countries in Europe, you're rich because of the subjugation of black people, but specifically, you're rich because of the subjugation of black women. So when will you pay back the things? Do you know that up until 2015 in Britain, every time we paid our tax, we were paying off the money that, the government paid to slave owners. So when slavery ended, obviously black people were viewed as property, so they had to be paid out for their losses, their business losses, because they could no longer operate in this field. So they were paid out the equivalent of, I'm told, billions. In today's money, they were paid out the equivalent of billions. And up until 2015, all the tax that we were paying was going back to offset the amount of money that was paid then, in the 1800s. And once they finished paying it, the HMRC, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, they tweeted and they said, "Woohoo, we helped to end slavery and we did it with your tax money. Are you okay?" What? So people looked at it into a bit further and they said, "What do you mean? So did you pay reparations? Did you pay the families of the enslaved?" "Oh, no, we paid the slave owners. We paid them. Yeah, we paid them." And so we have to look at the collective imaginations of history, our collective, the way that we collectively decide on what is history and what is true. Because the HMRC believed that they ended slavery and that they paid everybody and they fixed everything, when in fact they just paid people for properties and things like that. And when we look at the ledger and we look at all the people that were paid off, a lot of them are in Parliament today. Their families are in Parliament today. So the old money that you come from is blood money, but they're in Parliament today. Is that not a reason to be angry? Meanwhile, there are people who died in a burning building in West London, Grenfell Fire. They died in that building because you just didn't want to install sprinklers. But we could pay off the family of slave owners, but they died. And now that that estate block is gone, that was mainly filled with, I think that they said from like the 7th floor upwards, mainly filled with brown and black people of color, working class, that died. Some of them jumped out the window. They told us that officially 72 people died. I don't know the equivalent of the kind of like, like the blocks that you have here that people live in, lots of people live in here. Do you think it's possible for that entire building to burn and only 72 people died? But then when they say that, they mean that 72 people that were documented. Because then we've got another thing about immigration, border control, all of those things there, very white supremacist patriarchal imaginations that you can put lines in things and say you can't come past that point, I'm going to have that thing. So I look at the experiences that we're having in Britain and I look at events like this and I think that there is progress, there is possibilities for us to move forward, there are possibilities for us to do something greater, but we have to be honest that there are reasons to be angry. Colonialism lasted for how many years? Some places are still colonized now. That Elizabeth, Queen, I call her Lizzie, Elizabeth is still head of state in a lot of Caribbean countries. And it's just like, head of what? We talk about the Commonwealth. The wealth isn't common because it's kept with one family. So you didn't share that wealth with all of the rest of the man. Like, it's not shared amongst us. So language and how that language is meant to negate our anger. Our anger is valid. The transatlantic slave trade, for years and years and years, black women had to birth the people that would be used on this conveyor belt of white supremacist patriarchal capitalism. Like, they're just feeding them into the system, never getting them back, gone, taken away. And now people are trying to put back the pieces of themselves, put back the pieces of their histories. And we think that that's okay. Isn't that a travesty that people have to do that, have to go in search of themselves? We all have to search for ourselves in one way or another, but we set some people up to have to search even more than others. And that is a reason to be angry to me. Black. One of the first times that we start interacting with the terms of blackness happened in 1735 with Systema Naturae, written by Carolus Linnaeus. And in there, he categorizes the Homo afer and the Homo europaeus. And he says that the Homo afer, dark skin, angry, aggressive, can't be trusted, not very smart. He categorizes these people, and the Homo europaeus, very calm, lovely temperament, very intelligent, beautiful. All of these things, all of these categorizations become formed. And these were the men that worked around the Enlightenment period. And they decided in that moment what the construct of race was going to be. Now, people had been talking about blackness in some shape or form prior to that. But if we're talking about documentation, if we're talking about books that started saying that this is how everything's going to go, one of the first books was Systema Naturae, that said that this is you as black and this is you as white, and then we'll figure out everybody else as we go along. And because of that categorization, we then had the basis for the transatlantic slave trade and for colonization. So when we talk about blackness, who is afforded the term blackness? Blackness and racism are hand in hand. The terms had to be created to justify the means, right? But the racism was always there. You ask yourself, which came first, the chicken or the egg? But they had to work together. You already had to, in your subconscious, you already had to see a certain group of people as below you to be able to create the categorizations that would help justify how you then go on to treat them. So in this day and age where we're finding ourselves and we're talking about, let's not talk about race, but literally Systema Naturae was created as a foundation to allow us to build everything else on top of it. So we're picking out different bricks from a structure, but not addressing the foundation that it's laid upon. I don't know if you have the equivalent of the term here, but when black people talk out in Britain, speak up in Britain, they're told that they're pulling the race card. Oh, you're pulling the race card. You've made it about race again. But that's one card. You've got the entire deck. I've got one card. So I wouldn't be pulling something if that wasn't the way that you've constructed everything to be. Right? So we're looking at blackness and we're understanding that blackness goes beyond just the color of our skin. It's a specific societal categorization in order to support white supremacist patriarchal ideology. So your blackness goes beyond just you. It's the system that you've been racialized and minoritized into, and you're told that in terms of social mobility, you're not going to go behind, above this station. When Muhammad Ali died, one of the main things that I noticed in the British space was that people kept saying, oh no, R.I.P., rest in peace, Muhammad Ali. You know, I really loved him. He transcended race. I said, he transcended race. So did he fly like that? How did he transcend race? Did he levitate? Like, wow, I want some of that. How did he transcend race? He had to die to transcend race. Martin Luther King had to die to transcend race. Nelson Mandela had to die to transcend race. All of these people, especially when we're looking at black masculinity, black men are so much less of a threat to you when they've died, and therefore they can then transcend race, the very thing that you try to hold them within to justify the violence that you inflict upon them. So they are now free to go. And now that they've gone, let's take everything that they've ever said and take it out of context. Let's wear it on T-shirts. Why not? He said, I have a dream. He wasn't talking about you. You're a nightmare. But everything just starts looking very, very messy. But the thing is, they said other things, though. They did say other things. And you don't remember the whole speech. You're just using a certain section of the speech. And I want you to refer to all the other bits where they said that this can't run. This shouldn't continue. And when they kept talking about Muhammad Ali, I thought this is somebody that was overtly against the system. He didn't want to go to Vietnam. He didn't want to do this. He didn't want to do that. And he was very clear that he did not want to do these things. And you hated him when he was alive. And then every time black people speak up about certain things, you're like, why can't you just be like Martin Luther King? You know, he was so great. He had the right idea. He said love is the way, not hate. But you shot him in the face. You shot the guy in the face. He wore a suit because you said, oh, I can't listen to you if you're wearing all that baggy stuff. Can't hear you, won't hear you. He wore a suit and you shot him in the face. So that tells me that no matter what we wear, how we say things, where we say things, how we march, it doesn't matter because it's not how we're doing the thing, it's that you don't want the thing to be done. Because the system, as far as you're concerned, is fine as it is. And anybody who challenges that, whether they do a peaceful march, whether they lie down on the floor, whether they do whatever, it will never be enough, because what they're essentially doing is still dissenting to a system that chooses to suffocate them. And that is a reason to be angry. But then, womanhood. Womanhood. When we think about the construct of womanhood, we think about whiteness. Whether you want to admit it or not, you think about whiteness. And when we look at the aesthetics that people are aspiring to get to in the mainstream consciousness, it appears to be white. Like, we're told that this is the kind of embodiment of beauty. Somebody who's usually white, usually slim, usually blonde, usually blue-eyed. And that is presented as the ideal, and everybody else works around that. BMI, the body metrics index, body mass index, created on the basis of Scandinavian women. And so then a black woman will step on the scales and you'll say she's morbidly obese, but you're not taking into account that in terms of somatotype, she might just be built differently. It doesn't take into account muscle mass. It doesn't take into account any other thing other than just gravitational pull. And so black women are beating themselves up. They're internalizing anger that they are not meeting the standards that have been set by a society that did not set the standards for you to meet in the first place. In fact, when we think about womanhood in terms of the Western sort of consciousness, when we think about it in terms of the European consciousness, and we talk about womanhood, we're talking about white women. And white women know intimately that we're talking about white women, because when people go to make Oscar speeches, they stand on the stage and they say, "I want to thank everybody for supporting us. Thank you so much. We have supported the Hispanics. We have supported the Asians, and we have supported the black people. And now it's time for you to support us." Who is the us? What do you mean? Who's the us? So that means that white women can just be women. Everybody else has a prefix before their womanhood. And that prefix is what determines what privileges you get within the construct of womanhood. I know how many white women message me on social media that, "Oh, before I started following you, Kelechi, you made me awfully uncomfortable because I've never been referred to as white." Hey, white, 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 white. Because we need to say it, because we can't racialize so many other people, and white people move through the world unracialized. They move through a racialized society being not racialized. And that is where the benefits come from. So everybody else has those, those prefixes, and that's what we need to address. And so if we say that blackness was created and documented by Carolus Linnaeus as this thing that's primal, that's masculine, that's this, that's bad, that's all of these things, and black women also fall into that category, black women by default are actually masculine. That's what we're told. So then when white women cry, having the monopoly on white feminine purity means that black women, especially the darker that they are, they're always going to be the aggressors, because there's that masculinity inferred by the blackness. When black people, specifically when we look at the numbers, when black men are shot down by police, what is in the police reports? He just kept growing taller and taller, Trayvon Martin. He kept growing, I shot him, he just kept growing taller and taller. He wouldn't back down. You're not talking about a human there, right? This is still a human person. All of these things happen. Justice for Theo in France, the way that he was treated by police officers, and I can't even bear to think about it. I remember reading the story and thinking, like, how do you do this to people? But it's because when we look at actual masculinity and the way that it's presented within this toxic society, black men are told that they have the monopoly on what that means because of their darkness. But that also means that black women are also compartmentalized there. So black women exist in a space, they exist in the liminalities of womanhood. We've had to construct our own type of womanhood in the peripherals of this thing. And so what's happening is that now people are seeing that and wanting to pull it into the mainstream, but pull it in without the blackness. And so I feel like that is also a reason to be angry. So when we look at things in isolation, angry, black, woman, those are all different challenges. And so when you say angry black woman, you're almost flattening the experience of what that actually means. So I'm in the public space and I speak like this all of the time. Some people love it and some people absolutely despise it. But that's not going to change the fact that I know that I was called to speak truth to power. I see the things and I say the things as I see them. I have a podcast literally called Say Your Mind. Officially, it's called Say Your Mind. It's got an unofficial title. And Suck Your Mum. and that is the unofficial title. And I remember when I said, I'm going to have a podcast that's called this, people are like, no, Kelechi, you can't do that. Why? Why? Because I'm angry black and woman already, right? So what's the worst that could happen? So now I've talked to you about anger, blackness, womanhood. How did I use all of these things, specifically anger, to get to where I am? I believe that anger, like I said, is one of our sure paths to joy. This society, like Audre Lorde just told us, the very real response that anyone should have to racism is anger. Right? Not understanding, not empathy, not reaching across the aisle to your racist grandparents. Anger. I'm not saying slap them up, but I'm not saying that. But, it's this idea that we can love people out of an institutional and systemic problem. No, be angry because it's usually those things that have the chance of moving things. And I'm not talking about a useless anger. I'm talking about the kind of anger that moves, right? Anger only becomes a problem when it calcifies within your personhood, when it calcifies around your divinity. Like everybody here today is here for a reason. You are divine beings. And for some reason, in this chaotic life, you found yourself here in this moment. Right? Whatever, it doesn't matter how much you're taking in, you found yourself here in this moment for a reason. I traveled from London to be here for a reason. We all chose, before we entered into this earthly experience, we all chose at one point that we were going to meet here today for this conversation. We chose that, and I believe that hand on heart, regardless, right? So we chose to be here, why? For what? Because we need to talk about the way that anger is our saving grace. Anger is what's going to save us going forward. Call it out, speak it out. If it stays here, that's where it calcifies. And I truly believe that when we look at black women specifically, this epidemic of fibroids, there are literal books that talk about the body keeping the score. Your body has a reaction to your environment. And when we look at that specific site within, the people's bodies that have uteruses, when we look at that specific site and we think about the intergenerational trauma that's been applied to that site throughout the centuries, we're talking about these people had to birth people that were going to only know suffering, that were only going to know pain. What does that do to those organs there? And everybody's running up and down, going to the doctors, fibroids. But we're not hearing white women really having fibroids. No? So what's happening there? So as it is above, so it is below. As it is above, so it is below. Whatever you're experiencing intellectually, cerebrally, you're still finding space for it in your body, right? There's somewhere that you need to keep it. So I invite you to consider that anger is the thing that helps these things move. Anger should rile you up. I'm going to go to the doctors. Anger should rile you up. I need to do this for myself. I need to put myself first. There has to be a point where you stop being the sacrificial lamb for a society that will cut you up into pieces and throw you away. That does need to happen. And so I think about those things, and I think about those things often. And just like water only becomes diseased when it becomes stagnant. You can't drink it. It's a site that you're just nasty. But water's moving. That's energy. Water's moving. So the anger needs to move. The anger has to go somewhere. We have to get together and decide what that anger does. An example of that is that I noticed when I used to work as a receptionist in a lot of corporate spaces, I noticed that there was a lot of racism there. It was really funny to behold. I remember there was, I'm working as a receptionist, minding my business, minding my black business, and another black woman works in another department. She's doing her thing. We've never spoken. Me and this black woman have never, ever spoken before. One day, she happens to walk by because I was wearing flamey rings. She happens to walk by and she's just like, oh, those rings are nice. Out of nowhere, a white woman shows up. Look at you both, the trouble twosome. But this is the first time we've spoken, so how are we the trouble twosome? Like, we don't even know each other. But it's that idea of black women or black people gather and they need to be disbanded. We see it in police. I don't know what it is like here with policing, but in Britain, when 2 or 3 black people gather in my name, the police will show up. Like, what are you lot doing? Clear out. You know? So those things are very, very real. What is the fear? What is the subconscious fear when you start seeing, like, the gathering? What is that? What is that? What's happening there? Because are you afraid that we might process the anger? And people will say that this is not a conscious thing. Oh, it's not a conscious thing. I wouldn't think that. I'm a lovely person. I'm not negating the fact that you as an individual are a lovely person. But the same way that I just described fibroids as an intergenerational energy that is there because of trauma, is it possible that there is an intergenerational fear that you embody, that subliminally you're reminded of every time that the media, TV shows, films, they also remind you of this thing that, oh, beware of the blacks and also beware of the anger. It's there all of the time if you're willing to look at it. In terms of the personifications and the stereotypes and the character typing of a lot of black people, black women, we see it there all of the time. So I worked in these spaces and I saw all of the racism that was rife, the microaggressions, the macroaggressions, I saw it all. What did I do with my anger? I created Sally in HR. Now, Sally in HR has gone viral. She's a white cartoon character that I made on the iPhone Animoji situation, and she has little skits. And I voiced her because I'm an actor. I voiced her and I address these things, but I never use the term racism. I never use the term black. I never, because people recognize the situations just without me not saying that. So how is it possible that racism doesn't exist, yet one Sally video can garner 500,000 views? That means that there's something that people recognize in her, right? That there's a dynamic that people recognize in Sally. That's one example. I am a pole dance instructor. I've got my own pole dance studio. And in 2016, when I was still teaching twerk and all of these things in the UK space, I had a real problem with how twerk was being co-opted in a mainstream arena, especially since people were crediting Miley Cyrus as the creator and originator of twerk. And, I'm not going to knock her convulsing. She was doing her thing, but that's definitely not twerk. So I thought what would be great was that I'm going to take my twerk workshops around the UK as a way of educating people and also skin out, bruck out, them kind of things there. So I just thought I'm going to do that. And I reached out to a white-owned studio in Manchester. I sent her my video and I said, I'd really like to come through and teach this twerk class. And I see that you only have a 30-minute class and I'm using my PT brain, like how does anyone warm up in time to have a 30-minute session? That doesn't sound safe. We need longer. I see that you've also credited Miley Cyrus. I would like to tell you about how it originated from the New Orleans and before that, West Africa. So I want to bring that to the table. These are all the things I want to offer. Thanks for your email. I don't enjoy your style of twerk. When me and my girls twerk, we put our knee pads on and throw down. And I don't know what they threw down and when they picked it back up, but it was not good. It wasn't. It was actually rather scary. And so I'm reading that message that is not professional at all. A simple, our calendar's full, would suffice. But there's something that you reacted to when I sent you my video that let you know that you're a fraud. And so that reaction, now you're going to get got. So I put my video next to her video and I put it online and I said, I just want to understand something because this is the screenshot of the email that came through from this person. And now that people are dragging you up and down on the internet, it's like, oh, guys, this is horrible. Stop being mean to people. But you were mean to me. You were mean to me. So why are you now upset that people are doing this? And I had to think about, I'm not going to cuss you out. I'm not going to respond in that type of anger. I'm going to use that anger and say, can everybody see this? And so I was shocked by the number of Black American women specifically who then went on to say, you should just open your own space. Why are you looking for their validation? You should just open your own space. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? How do I open my own space? Like, how is that a thing? I can't open my own space. That's ridiculous. But can I not open my own space? How would that look if I had my own space? Like, why don't I use anger to open my own space, and then I don't have to ask people for permission to do the thing that I know that I was called to do? And so the money that I would have used for a wedding with my partner, didn't use it for that, used it to open a small studio in Clapton. And it was little. It was so small, this studio. Could probably hold like 10, 12 people, but it was beautiful because in my head I already knew what it was going to look like shiny as hell floors, beautiful windows, beautiful lighting. I knew what it needed to look like, Libra sun. I knew what it needed to look like to be aesthetically pleasing, but what we're doing is taboo, isn't it? It's pole dance. 8th house, Scorpio. We knew that's taboo, but I'm going to do it because I know that in there is our liberation, in there is our emancipation, so I'm going to do that thing. But that's what anger allowed me to do. I did not sit there going, oh, when are people going to give me my things? I said, you can keep your things, but I promise you, the thing that I'm going to do is going to far exceed yours. So now, when British Vogue are doing their things, when this person's doing their things, when Time Out London is writing all the reviews of pole dance studios, who are they writing about? Okay, then. But it was from that experience of that twerk thing that I was like, I'm going to open a studio where I teach pole dance, where I teach twerk, and I'm just going to do my thing. But every single time, you cannot say pole dance, you cannot say London without saying Kalechnikov, right? But I needed to find a way for the anger to move. And because I knew what it felt like to be ostracized, I then knew that I had a responsibility to those that do not ascribe to a particular gender, that want to feel free in their sexuality, that feel like they're too big physically for spaces that want to limit them. I had to make sure that the space that I owned was revolutionary in that way. I still need to make money to keep the place open, but I also need to find a way to subsidize certain things so other people have access. So I had to start thinking, using my anger to think with a revolutionary framework that would allow for other people to feel their anger through pole dance or whatever, or through, twerk or whatever. I knew that was what I was called to do. Use my anger, create the space that other people can do their things, and they can look at those spaces and say, I don't even need you now because I've got this. And one of the proudest moments for me was I was teaching a twerk class, and the woman was getting down, like she was getting down. Woo! And it got hot, kind of hot like it is here, yeah? And she took off her wig and she put it on the side. I was like, thank you, Lord. Imagine being able to create the kind of space that somebody could be in and they just go, woo, I'll pick you up later. Need to make sure I make it all the way down here. So I needed to make sure that I created the kind of space that someone would do that. And I felt blessed, like I did that. Because you're not going to do that in a white-owned space. You sure as hell. Oh, is that your hair? It's not. Stop asking me questions. Can I touch it? No, you can't. Stop asking me questions. Leave me alone. So, I think about these things, and I know that these are the things that I can offer to us. I can offer to us collectively. That as a black woman who consistently puts her head above the parapet and sometimes faces horrendous backlash, I know that this is what I can offer the world. That your anger is not something that you should be scared of. In fact, what you should be scared of is not feeling it. In the face of so much injustice, James Baldwin said, if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. All right? So if I'm inviting you to feel that anger, but let the anger move, and let it move through you how it needs to, you'll know that it's the true kind of righteous anger when all it asks of you is to have a better society. Yeah? The kind of one that wants you to go and drag people down, beat people up. I don't know them ones there. Well, sometimes I do. But generally, we're talking about the kind of anger that asks you to divest from the systems that no longer serve you, but moves you towards a path of allowing you to show up as your highest self in this life. However you do that is up to you, but you have a responsibility to yourself. And the reason that you are here today is for me to gift you that. Take your anger and go where your light shines. You've got to do that for you. Thank you.
Wow. Come on, Rotterdam.
Thank you.
Kelechi Okafor. This is amazing. It's been amazing.
Thank you.
I want to give the space to Clarice Gagard.
Thank you so much. Oh, that was whew. Hot. I mean, I think you said it was like church in here. It was a sermon.
Yes.
Preach, right? No, it doesn't. I said preach, right? I feel like we should all get up for a bit. Like shake it off, right? Right? You don't have to if you don't want to, but I feel like there's so much energy moving in here. I saw people waving their fans. It was like green leaf up in here. So, do we have music? Can we play a little something? Because we gotta.
Oh, is that what we're doing?
You know what?
Oh, I didn't know. Oh, wow.
Aruna, I want to see you get down.
Thank you, Aruna. Thank you.
Just, because damn. Kelechi. This is too slow. We want some hyped up music. Come on.
They're like, we don't have that. We were just hoping that you chill out. They'll give it to us at the end. Yeah.
Okay.
They'll give it to us at the end.
We'll do it at the end. But
yeah.
It was good to shake it off a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? So thank you for
My
that.
pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Give
Thank
it
you.
up
Thank
again.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
I hope the people watching at home also got a minute to get up and feel that as well. Even though you're at a distance, I think you must feel the energy sort of radiating straight through your screen. Yeah, so I'm Clarice. This is a collaboration with Lilith Mag, which is an intersectional feminist journalistic platform that I started with Hasnel Marudi. Oh, some of y'all might know it. And I think I really connected also with what you said about creating your own spaces. Like, that feeling anger is good, but then it has to be transformative also.
Yes.
And then you can create these spaces where you can thrive instead of just be angry that you don't have things,
Yes. Yeah.
Audre Lorde also speaks about uses of anger. That's
Yes.
the essay,
Yes.
So I was like, yeah. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to ask 2 questions, and I think it's better just to have a dialogue going on, so I'm not going to take up too much of the space.
Okay.
I have 2 questions. I have more questions, but I'm going to ask 2 of them.
Okay.
And then we're going to move on to the questions in the audience. My first question, you said so many things. My first question would be, when we talk about owning your anger or feeling your anger, particularly as Black women, and I think in society, anger is something that's, demonized, and particularly when the more marginalized you are, the more it's demonized. Any kind of emotion, really. Mm-hmm. But I think because of that, often we don't even know how to feel our anger.
Yes.
And our parents or whoever raises you don't tell us because they don't know how to feel their anger. You know. So my question, my question would be, how do you even feel that anger? How do you know where it's sitting in your body when you've never been taught what it is?
That's amazing. Yeah. Thank you, Clarice. I think one of the things is stillness. I think, in fact, the only thing is stillness. Like, there has to be a stillness. There has to be this space where you can sit with yourself and kind of do that body scan and see what is coming up for you. So many people are afraid of being alone, and that's what lockdown really, really brought out for a lot of people. When you are left alone with your thoughts, who are you? When you can't escape to the office, when you can't escape here and escape there, who are you? And a lot of people don't know, and that is when what happened? They got out into the streets and started marching. So the anger was there all of the time, and it was only because they were made to stop that then they actually could process that. Actually, I'm not happy about a lot of things. I'm going to get outside and I'm going to let people know that I'm not happy about a lot of things, because the anger is there, but it's just stagnant, it's just calcifying, it's just festering, because you can see in so many things that are happening in our society that the anger is definitely there. People just don't know what to do with it. But if they allow stillness, that is where it comes through. Any kind of, spiritual teaching that you look at, they tell you about stillness. Everything still comes back to stillness. Even in the Bible, it says, like, be still and know that I am God. They didn't say, go for a run. They didn't say, go hiking. They didn't say all of that. It just said, be still and know that I'm God. And then that I am God. I am of the belief that it's talking to you as the individual and your divinity. Be still and know that you are God. Like, know that you are part of the God self, that know that you are part of the collective consciousness. But you're only going to know that in stillness. And from that stillness, you actually realize just how much of an alchemist you are, that you can take your anger and you can do so much with it in society. So it took stillness. I mean, I took the money that I was earning from like workshops and things, and I took myself to therapy. And I think that that's another thing, but I know that for some people there isn't that accessibility to that. I know that there are organizations that are helping with that to give people access to mental health care and things like that. And I would really recommend, if possible, to be able to find a good therapist, because enough of us don't have people just to listen to us. We exist in a society where people listen to respond. They don't just listen to listen. Because sometimes you won't have the answer for certain things. And you have to be okay with having the vocabulary to say that I don't know the answer to what you're going through, but what I want to be able to do for you here is honor you and just hold space for you. Like, what would you like us to do in this moment? We just don't know how to do that. We talk about feeling our anger, but we also have to think about how do we make space and how do we hold space for other people when they are feeling their anger. And, you know, something happened over the past 24, 48 hours. I was talking about it earlier, where Channel 4, a channel in the UK, they were programming for 24 hours, just black people, just black things. So the sitcoms, the adverts, every single thing from morning to night was black, 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 black. All right? And they knew that they were going to face racist backlash and all of those things, but everything was black. Now, that's a wonderful premise. That's a wonderful basis to have programming. But how is it that you had 24 hours doing that of celebrating black Britishness, but you missed me out? When actually my singular contribution to the black British space is unrivaled. Like, we've just had this conversation here, and I've been able to impart what I know and allow for that accessibility and allow you insight into my anger. I've been able to do that with you all here today. Now, imagine I've been doing this consistently since at least 2010. And then so many people are now getting book deals and doing things based on the work that I have done. And so is it wild that I would expect that if you're going to do 24 hours of programming, that I would at least get a peek? And so I tweeted this. I mean, I'm in like a few seconds of an advert. You don't hear my voice. I just kind of show. And that's all because my friend, a black man, Kevin Morosky, an incredible director and filmmaker, said, you know, I want you to be here. This guy's talking about podcasting. I just want you to kind of show up, and that's it. But if Kevin hadn't done that, I would not have been seen at all. And so we need to talk about how TV also informs our collective memory. Because if I'm not there in that day, that's this momentous occasion of blackness, you're writing me out of history. What? Because I'm not palatable, because I'm not likable. And the thing is, people always do tell on themselves, because one of the main terms that they kept using on the internet was, well, maybe they didn't use you because you're not likable. Well, let's talk about the fact that likability is a sexist construct, because men aren't asked to be likable. Like, no tea, no shade, but Joe Budden can beat the pregnancy out of his girlfriend, and he's still got one of the most, amazing, they call it amazing, most successful podcasts going, and he could walk away from that podcast and go into something else. Men are not asked to be likable. Men can sit up here and be like, I'm the best rapper alive, and there's no one that can touch me, and it's just talk. But I, as a black woman, cannot tell you that I'm the greatest to ever do it when it comes to social media and speaking about the things that need to be spoken about in a black British space. I can't do that because it's arrogant, because I'm tooting my own trumpet. But if I don't pararam my own trumpet, who's going to do it for me? Yeah? So I thought about that, and I thought, like, you are all angry. You're all angry about the state of things, but you're angry at me for letting you know that you're angry. So where is the space? Where was the space being held for me to highlight my frustration, celebrate everybody else that's doing wonderful things, but to highlight my frustration that this isn't fair, that I've been left out of this. But men were showing up, saying that I'm bad vibes, that I'm horrible, that's why I wasn't chosen. But they platformed a right-wing black woman who was spewing horrendous things late at night. So she's likable, a right-wing black woman, she's likable, she deserves to be there. So we know that it's all lies, and we know that when we look at everything and we strip it all away, it's about the fact that I choose to be vulnerable. I choose to be vulnerable in the public space and say, like, this is where it hurts, help me. And we are not used to that, because black women don't ask for help because they're strong. And that strength is an unfeeling strength. But there's vulnerability and there's strength in vulnerability, and that is where I choose to go.
You answered like 4 questions. That was amazing. Thank you. And actually, sort of also piggybacking of what you just said about vulnerability and also having to be strong, particularly as Black women. Sometimes, you know, something shows up as anger, and then it's something else.
Yes.
Grief,
Yes.
for example. I think a lot of anger is grief for
Yes.
so many things
Yes.
that we haven't allowed ourselves to feel or to be. Or so, how would you say you can recognize, first of all, you know, you have to recognize the anger, what
Yeah.
we just spoke about, and then you have to recognize where does it come from?
Yeah.
What kind of anger is it? You know, anger is just the base layer.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
always something under it. So
Yeah.
how do you go about that?
I love that you say that, because that's one of the main things that my therapist has always said, and she's encouraged me to kind of like have these conversations publicly and everything, talking about the fact that anger is a surface emotion. We go underneath that to find hurt, pain, grief, you know, and you recognize it when you see it. Because when we're talking about Black women specifically, they're grieving the womanhood that they're ostracized from. They're grieving the collective histories that was snatched away from them. They're having to reimagine a time before, you know, white supremacist patriarchy interrupted our histories. They're having to imagine a time before that. So the grief is always there waiting. The grief is always there waiting, and anger is just that entry point into it. But we have to decide, like, whew, I've got bills to pay. So how much grief can I choose to channel today? And I think that that is what I invite everyone to do, really, but specifically Black women to do, to like carve out time in a day. You're never too busy to tend to the flower that is you, like to the divinity that is you. So 5 minutes of just acknowledging, this hurts. And where it shows up most, you'll find that online, constantly, people are having conversations about dating. Who pays for this on the date? You know, where certain men like Kevin Samuels, Dr. Umar, like they're building platforms of telling women, like, this is the secret to getting a man. And the actual secret is that, no, you can do all of those things and still find yourself in violent situations, in unfulfilling situations. We tell the truth, and the truth is that we deserve better. And that also comes from Black men owning and learning to love themselves and to love themselves publicly, so they can love the Black women around them in their community publicly as well. And that goes for just like men as a whole. Like whenever we look at, whether we're looking at racism, whether we're looking at sexism, when we're looking at these two different dynamics, those who appear to be benefiting from it are also, you know, they're also, they're also constrained by it. They're also incarcerated by the very thing that they are, you know, benefiting from. Right? And so we have to think about emancipating all of ourselves. And we've been told that nobody's free while anybody else is unfree. So while we're still out here doing this and doing that, what appears to be privilege to you, you're still suffering over there. You need to acknowledge it.
Acknowledge it, yeah. All of the things. And I think we have to go to the audience.
Yeah, okay. I know we must be running out of time.
Yeah, we are running out of time. But I think we have some questions in the live stream. And let's start with questions here, then I'll go to the live stream. Does anyone have a question? Just show of hands who all has a question. Oh, really?
Shall I just say that?
After all of this?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a mic or do I come to you? Okay, I'll come to you.
Okay.
Just to say, you've got until 3:15 now, so you can relax a little bit. Yeah.
I was racing through. I was like,
Thank you so much. I wanted to ask, I have a question from the back, Ida, that she wanted me to ask. 1 second. Let me open that one up.
And we've got a question here as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
I suppose the main thing she wanted to know was, like, when did you first start transforming this anger? Like, the place you speak from now is like you've really got a consciousness around the importance of that anger and how to channel it and how to process it and how to also feel the grief. But, like, were you always like that? Was there a moment where you learned the power of doing that? Like, how did that initially occur?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Ida. That's a really, really interesting question. So I sort of make no qualms about talking about the fact that when I was much younger, I'd say about 7, when, you know, my mum, I came to the UK, I moved to the UK when I was 5 from Nigeria, and my mum needed to work and do all of these things, so I'd left with a childminder, and there was sexual abuse that took place there. Now, I didn't speak about it at the time, I didn't really speak about it until I was 16, but when we talk about the calcification of grief and anger, that is what I experienced in those years, and those are actually also my formative years as well, right? So I look at my school reports, and teachers would often say, usually mainly white teachers, would often say that Kelechi's so talented, she's so intelligent, she's got such a great way with language, but she's so moody. And I would invite us to consider what that term moody means. They didn't consider that it could be anything else other than moodiness, aggressiveness, and anger. So even as a child, I was already getting the baby versions of these terms, ascribed to me, and it couldn't have been anything else. So that kind of like stayed with me, and I guess I'm just very high functioning. I would just get on with the things. Everything to me became about achievement. I can achieve my way out of grief. I can achieve my way out of childhood sexual abuse, and my focus then really became on knowing that I'm naturally gifted. I have a natural affinity with sports and fitness and training and athleticism. So I would push myself to be like stronger, faster, all of this stuff. And who was I doing it for? When I really started to listen to the voice, the kind of like the inner child voice, I needed to do that because it was like, I need to do this so nobody can hurt me ever again. And then there comes a point where I have to address that. And I didn't know all of that at the time. It was just a muddle of just grief and emotions and feeling that the world didn't understand me, and then resentment, but then looking at people who should have been, whether caregivers, in the education system or in a familial sense, nobody understood what that looks like. Nobody had like medicine for the kind of grief that I felt. And so even at that age, I knew that I'd probably have to find it myself, but I didn't know how. And so one day I remember I was on a bus. I was around, I think, like 21 years old. I'm going to be 35 in a couple of weeks. I was on a bus, and I just thought to myself, it was so random. I thought to myself, gosh, it feels so horrible to live inside of me. And then in that moment, I thought, but who is then the me that's living inside of me? So it was that glimpse into what it is to be the eternal observer that made me realize that there is more to me than the things that have happened to me, because there's clearly a part of me now that's looking at this and going, it's horrible to be in this space here. What is this? And so from that moment on the bus, I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I was like, I'm going to find, I've heard about therapy. I'm going to find something. I'm going to find something because I deserve peace of mind. I deserve joy. I shouldn't have to live in this space, you know? And so initially I went through the national healthcare system, and I got given a therapist, and she was horrendous. But then I went back again. So I had her, she was horrible. I went back again because I just knew that there was something in there. And then I was blessed to be assigned Black female therapists. And one of them, Sarah Ogole, was the first person, young black woman therapist, that gave me the first kind of pieces of vocabulary. She was like, what you experienced was soul murder. Because I remember saying to her that there was a time that I was having a nightmare, some might call it, or a dream. And I saw myself on the table, you know, at a morgue. And I was looking at myself, and I was crying in the dream, and I was just like, no, you can't be dead, because we didn't do this, and we didn't do that, and we didn't do this, and I was listing all of the things that I wanted to achieve being here. And when I woke up, and I was just like, that's it, like, that's it. Like, I'm not going to be recounting that. I'm going to do my things, and there is no person that's going to stand in my way. Like, I'm going to do my things. And so I feel like that's where the energy came from to be able to do that. But it was that sitting on the bus, realizing that everything felt horrible, having a terrible experience with therapy the first time, but refusing to give up and going back again until I found Sarah Ogole, learning the terms about soul murder, learning the vocabulary around mental health, understanding that within the Nigerian community, I guess in the Black community, we don't really want to talk about mental health. I would say to my mum, oh, I feel a bit depressed. God forbid. No. There's no depression in this house. Pray it away, pray it away, pray it away. And I was just like, It's still here. so there had to come a point where I just had to be okay with people not understanding what journey I was on, but I needed to find therapy. And for some people, it comes in many forms, but for me, I needed a space where it was a professional that just held space for me and could help me articulate the kind of the kind of travesties that I guess I've kind of faced in life, and to come home to myself. So when I talked about the shards, pieces of yourself, being, these refracted images of yourself, I needed a therapist initially to help me painfully kind of put those pieces back together of me. And that's when, I could dance properly again. I've always been a great dancer, but I could dance from a space of freedom. Right? And, I feel like we don't talk often enough about how dancing helps to move grief. And that's why at Nigerian funerals, everybody's dancing up and down. And I remember a video of Tiwa Savage, the Afrobeat singer.
Died.
Yeah, people were like, why is she dancing? Her family's dead. Why is she dancing? Because dancing moves grief. Dancing is also sending that spirit onwards. There are so many uses of dance. And so I believe that dance saved me. I believe that Black women therapists saved me. But it took that initial moment of me going, rah, it's actually mad inside. Like, I need to do something. It's not nice to exist in this space, and doing something about it.
Yeah, thank you. It also sounds very much like you went sort of internal.
Yes.
To really sort of, research what it is that you're feeling and why, but also allowing yourself. There's a lot of sort of allowing yourself to be able to do that, and I think that's maybe also the first hurdle, to even allow yourself to take that step.
Yeah.
We had another question over there.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Thank you.
I had a question. I'm an indigenous person from the colonized Americas.
Yes.
And I feel that our community is actually very stuck in grief, more so than anger. So it's a lot of sadness, what we've lost and what we will never get back. And I was actually wondering, because Black people, for example, in the US are, there are like forcibly removed people on stolen land.
Yes.
And I think, like, because you also talked about collective and colonial structures, like, how could we maybe make that bridge between our peoples that we can learn from each other? Like, how can we as indigenous people learn to use anger to help each other, like, face that continuous loss of, like, being forcibly removed, actually both of our communities, but then also having our land stolen, actually also both of our communities.
Yes. And I love that, because that is it, finding the resonance in our collective histories. Because like you say, stolen land, stolen people, forcibly removed people, we're seeing it all of the time. And what they're doing to the indigenous people of the Americas, as well as bring the Black Americans that they brought over there, is that they're reimagining history. They're saying that this isn't a thing. Every year people are celebrating Thanksgiving. What are you giving thanks for? You stole it. And, people don't want to really use that term anymore, like, oh, everyone's becoming so PC now. Are people becoming more politically correct, or are they just telling the truth? Because you need to realize that, like I said earlier, like, nobody is free while anybody else is unfree. And we see, like, the reservations and the federal lands. Like, how are you drawing lines in somebody else's land and saying that this is what's going to happen here and this is what's going to happen there? There has to be a recognition. There has to be a cultural recognition of each other as groups of people that have suffered at the hands of white supremacy. And that just goes beyond us. That goes to East Asians, South Asians. It goes to everybody that has experienced the violence of colonialism, and then a reimagining of what actually happened, because documents were burnt. We all have to kind of sit there and go, where do we go now as people? Because others are being used as the model minority. People will turn around and go, but you're good. You're not like those savages over there. You're good. And some people buy into the lie. But you're still not going to get your things. We're all still going to find ourselves here. In fact, to keep us, like, kind of ostracized from each other, helps to strengthen white supremacy. I think that the moment that we all start acknowledging that, I see myself in your struggle, my struggle is not more than your struggle, we are here, that is when we can move forward, because otherwise we'll just be in the same space always. When we look at the suicide rates of the indigenous people of the Americas, when we look at the suicide rates, when we look at alcoholism, depression, all of those things were factored in white people came in and killed all the buffaloes so they wouldn't have anything to eat. That isn't by accident. That is by design. Forced hysterectomies, as we found that black birthing people have been subjected to as well. The Colombian women were having contraceptives tested on them without their knowledge. You know, that so much has been happening, and also a lot of things have been happening to the womb space. So there's so much, like, I'm not well-researched enough to even go into depth of those specific things, but I see it. And there are people who have been researching these specific things, but I ultimately believe that we do need to be able to recognize each other and not buy into the hierarchical structures that white supremacy keeps giving us. Like, no, you're better than that person over there. Don't go and hang out with them. And understand that it's only together that we'll be able to really kind of move forward and dismantle everything.
Yeah, I also don't believe in a hierarchy of suffering, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Oppression Olympics. Yep. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And also, I think, because I love what you said about that our struggles are tied together and that they're often sort of used against each other.
Yeah.
And that we're all suffering under empire, basically.
Yes.
That when it comes to, you know, patriarchy, white supremacy, you previously also mentioned LGBT phobia.
Yes.
When it comes to disability,
Yeah.
Because I also liked how you talked about how your anger was misrepresented when you were younger, and I think often it happens a lot with people of color.
Neurodivergent, yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, with neurodivergent people that are not white.
Yes, yes.
So all these things sort of come together, and not because of oppression Olympics, like you said,
Yeah.
but because we are all consistent of different layers.
Yes.
Within these communities, within ourselves. So,
Yes.
and it's important to acknowledge that. We still have some time. I got some questions.
Okay.
Are there any questions in here?
I think we're good.
Everyone's just listening.
Everyone's just chilling out.
I'm going to do a question
Oh,
from online,
Aruna?
and then I'm
Aruna's
going
got a
to
question?
go to the boss, to Aruna. Yeah. So someone asked at the beginning already, do you try to control your anger when faced with day-to-day racist microaggressions and just straight-up aggression? What do you do with, I think the question is, what do you do with your anger? I think it says a lot that it's phrased this way. Do you try to control your anger when faced with day-to-day microaggressions?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
No. No. Like, I very much like my whole, like, I guess, online persona, but really me, actually, in real life, like, anybody can get it. Anybody at any time, anybody can get it. If I wake up today and Boris Johnson he's going to get it too. Like, everyone's going to get it. Because, why do I need to do that? If I've woken up and I've seen something wild, then I'm going to say that thing is wild. But the thing is, because I've been processing and channeling my anger in such a way, my anger is not disproportionate to the things that are happening. A lot of people, because they haven't processed the anger that they're feeling and they've tried to quell it, they've tried to do so many things to satiate something that is insatiable. When something happens, they are projecting every injustice onto that thing. Yeah. Whereas I can isolate that incident. I can cuss you out, specifically you. I can drag you, specifically you, about this specific situation, and I don't even have to mention anything else. Yeah. So the beauty, I guess, in working through your anger is that when the day-to-day things happen, I'll give you 5 cusses and I'll move on.
2 to 5 cusses. 2 to 5. No more than that.
Depends on what it is.
Depends on what the offense is.
Or sometimes I just let it slide, because we were talking earlier about Yoruba spirituality and Yoruba cosmology. Yeah. And, you know, the kind of indigenous spiritual beliefs of the Yoruba people, because my mum's Yoruba. And I mean, I think about that. I think about, you know, how people were displaced, people of West African descent, that they were displaced across the Americas and the Caribbean, and how quite a lot of them held on to Yoruba spirituality. Right. It became Kadombele, it became Santeria, it became all of those things. And I truly believe that the reason that these our brothers and sisters, were able to survive is because they held on to their original spirituality, and it kept them even when everything was moving wild out there. And that is ultimately why Haitian people are so demonized and vilified, especially by France, because you got batted up. Yeah. You got batted up. That's what happened. The revolution was not televised, and you got clarted there. And to this day, I'm like, voodoo's bad. Why is it bad? Because that belief, that energy made them do boss with you and you didn't know what to do. You said, slavery's over. Please, everyone go. And so we look at the vilification of people that dared to speak out as a collective and what that means for us as individuals. And I think about how in Yoruba spirituality, it talks about all of us, before we entered into this realm, we chose a head, we chose we chose a spiritual head. Some people chose unfortunate heads, and some people chose wonderful heads. But the thing about your head is that it's your character overall, and it's also your purpose when you go down to earth. And earth is referred to in Yoruba spirituality as the marketplace. So you go and trade, and remember what you went there to go and trade, and when you finish, you're going to pack your load and you're going to come back. Now, it would be a shame if you entered into that marketplace and you got distracted by the noise of the marketplace and you never made it to where you were meant to sell your wares. And so when sometimes things are happening and I want to get angry, I'm like, ooh, do not get distracted by the noise of the marketplace. Focus on where you're headed in the marketplace. Go and do what you need to do. Trade your wares, trade this, trade that. Do what you need to do. Leave it better, leave yourself better, and go. You don't have to do too much. So there has to be that balance.
It has to be, yeah.
You have to know it.
You're basically all saying two things. Like sometimes you can respond also out of trauma, I think. So sometimes it has nothing to do with the current situation, but it triggers you in a way, and then you bring all that baggage to that current situation, so that you have to sort of acknowledge that, or maybe, check yourself on that and heal that. And on the other side, it's also, I think once you have done that, it's also easier to discern. So to say, is this something that I need to engage with? Like it makes me mad, but
not that mad.
Not that mad. So then I can.
I could eat a Dorito. I'm all right. That's what, sometimes you have to look at it. Like, what can I do in it? I could eat a taco. I'm all right. Yeah. Because when I'm angry, I can't eat. So I thought, can I eat? Yeah, I'm all right. I'm good.
I love that. So it's also knowing yourself well enough to say, how angry does this actually make me? And I think when talking about, because for some people, maybe in the workplace, it's difficult to speak out, or maybe there are certain repercussions, so that it's very important to have these tools. Like, okay, how angry does it make me? What does it give me when I express this anger? Can I also express this in a way that it's not a conflict, but that I can say, this is my boundary. I do not want you to do this. And then keep it stepping. So that's
finding what that is. But oftentimes people don't want to respect boundaries, and oftentimes we find that when Black women specifically are asserting boundaries, whether it's in professional spaces or public spaces, people have a real thing with that. Well, what do you mean? Because we know, again, when I talk about the intergenerational remembering of things, you are not used to having Black women assert these boundaries and say, you cannot go beyond this point. I have this thing that I do generally where I walk in a straight line. I don't move out
I do
of the
that
way.
too.
I don't move out of the way.
I do not move out of the way.
I don't move out of the way because, especially in Britain, there was this whole thing of, like, you're a Black person, you get off the pavement for white people. So now I walk in a straight line. I bang weights. My shoulders are tough. One of us is going to leave that pavement, and I promise you it's not me.
Yes.
So, it's one of those things, and it might sound like, oh, you go through the day being combative. No, I just go through the day with a belief in myself that I am going to appear as fully as I can in this moment. And that's why I want for all of us to be able to appear as fully as you can in every moment, because you don't know how many moments you've got left. So how are you going to live a life for something that you don't even know? Like, in the next moment, you're done. And then when you're asked to recount, what did you do in the marketplace? You don't know, because you were busy lying. So, those are the kind of things I consider.
Thank you, Ian. Aruna, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a little bit about parenting and anger, because as a parent, I'm met with a lot of anger in my household, but from my own, but also from my children. So there's a lot of yelling in this house and a lot of throwing things. And I was wondering, like, how to make space for anger. And maybe not.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good
thing. That's amazing.
Someone else had that question, right? Also in the live. So that's
No, I think that's amazing, Aruna. And that's it. Like, as a parent, that's when I've really been humbled. Like, this 2-year-old will slap my face and I'm smiling. And they say that that's love, that's parental love, like you've just slapped my face. But you know, like there are certain things that we start to realize that we take from our children that we wouldn't have from anybody else. So then we have to also start teaching them. And what do we mean by discipline? Because, you know, like there's this whole conversation around, do you smack your child, do you not? I believe, like me, I'll just leave you to do what you're doing, but I also invite you to consider that, especially as Black people or people of Nigerian descent, especially if you grew up somewhere where white colonialism was a thing, consider that you're using structures that they use to hold you in place. And so why can I not convey my frustration with my child with my mouth and also speaking life into them at the same time? It becomes such an intentional process, and you realize just how much maybe our parents maybe didn't operate in the same way and where we are now. Like, we, at the same time as mothering my son, I'm mothering myself, I'm reparenting myself, because not only was a child born in that moment, a mother was born in that moment. And while I know that I mothered my brothers growing up, I mothered my mother really growing up. I didn't really get to have a childhood, but how do I honor and make space for my child to have a childhood? And so knowing that outside you'll be denied your anger, I need to make space for you to feel what you need to feel, but also let's talk about the parameters of that. So at the moment he's 2 and he will start throwing a tantrum and I don't know how they all learn that. They suddenly throw themselves on the ground. Like, where is the programming that suddenly they're like, wow, and they're just off? And I look at him on the ground and I'm like, your feelings are valid. Feel what you're feeling right now. Feel all of the feelings right now. Do not throw my microphone, though. That's what you won't do. Do not throw my microphone. But feel all the feelings that you're feeling now and just hold space for that. I'm not going to get off the floor. Stop doing that. When you are tired, you will get up. Because I think that there is something about that. There is something about being faced with somebody else's anger and not trying to fix them. And that's hard when you feel like you are responsible for these children. And it might sound really radical and woo-woo, but what else would you do in that situation? Oh, don't do that. Don't cry. Why am I telling you not to cry? Especially as a boy, yeah? Why am I telling you not to cry? In fact, I need you to understand the myriad emotions that you feel, the vast, kind of like, manifestations of the emotions that you feel. So one day you do not go out into the world and you try to tell another person not to feel, whether you tell another man not to feel, or most importantly, you go and tell women not to feel. I do not want that. So feel everything that you're feeling, but you will get off that floor and don't touch my microphone.
I think we have like 2 more minutes. I have a last question.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that you do not become self-destructive, especially in a white working environment where you are faced with daily microaggressions?
That is wonderful. I think that's a wonderful one to end on. Like, we're not delusional out here. We all know that we exist within a white supremacist patriarchal society. We all know that we've got to operate within capitalism. We all know all of these things, but that does not mean that we should forget that individually, we have a lot of power. Collectively, we have a lot of power. And I keep referring back to divinity. Our power goes beyond what our physical bodies can embody. It goes beyond that. Like, I feel the energy of everybody here. Like, you have so much more. And the way that these structures have been constructed is to take away, to extrapolate your divinity and just get you to be another cog in the machine. Never forget that you are divine. Never forget that there is still a God self that is an aspect of you. And it's like, honoring that. Yes, you've got to do your 9 to 5, got to pay your bills, you've got to do whatever, but what are you doing to feed your soul in the morning before you go to work? What are you doing to feed your soul when you come home? You can't keep crying in the toilets. Yeah? Every day you're going in the toilets to cry for what? You can't keep doing those things. Like, there has to be something that nourishes you. What are the extracurricular activities that you're doing that remind you that you are here and you're here for a reason? Like, do you want to be born, work, die? No, like, there has to be something that happens that's more than clocking in and clocking out. And
I would recommend pole dancing.
Pole dancing, that's what we found. And so I think that that's how you deal with the workspace. It makes it easier to deal with the workspace when you're like, when it's 5 o'clock, I'm leaving you lot to do what you're doing because there's something that brings me more joy outside of this space. And it gives you more confidence when you are doing something that nourishes your soul. Your soul can withstand some, hostile environments, basically.
Amazing. I think we can summarize everything
Thank
and
you.
say, find what feeds your soul and do it.
Do it. That's it.
Thank you
Follow your
so
life.
much. Thank you
My
so
pleasure.
much.
Thank you all so much. Thank you. Thank you.